Welcome back to the 40% Better podcast. My name is Bill. And as always, we're talking about leadership, specifically in the world of technology. And Craig has graciously accepted our invitation to tell us about the wisdom that he has learned in time he's been in leadership roles. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. I appreciate having me.
So the one standard question that I ask everybody at the beginning, because kind of helps to frame things, is how did you get started doing leadership kinds of things?
So, let me preface that with the very first leadership role I got put into because I was good at an individual. I delivered really well in the role that I had. My boss was so, okay, let's read this one again. And I did a horrible job. It was off. I mean, I feel so badly, and I'm looking at it in hindsight. I feel so badly for the folks who had to report to me in my first stint as a lead. I read all sorts of books trying to improve, but nothing really landed, and life was so like the moment. I I just didn't. It should not have been. Should not have been. Fast forward a few years, and I had the fortune to work for a director who spent time developing leaders on his teams before they were in a leadership role. We had 30 some people that were on his teams, and we met on a monthly cadence and other leadership curriculum. Things like John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership.
Mhm.
But we cover that chapter a week or chapter a month. And it really began to sink in to me and make a difference in not only my professional life, but in my personal life. I saw those leadership opportunities and approached these situations far differently than I previously would have. So a couple of years later, he gave me that opportunity to take a leadership role, and it just escalated from there. Just began escalating my leadership roles, and I went from an individual contributor to leading multi-billion-dollar technology.
Nice.
Nice.
The,
Go ahead.
yeah. The thing about that I find fascinating, and kudos to the guy that organized that, was having inside of a company a systematic approach to teaching people leadership skills so that everybody has the same language, and it's a level playing field, and there's no mystery, right?
Right. It's not a manipulation. It's understanding how to appreciate people, how to make a difference at scale, not through manipulation, but through genuinely caring about other people and helping them achieve a common objective.
Right.
I took this same practices what I learned from him and applied it to my teams as I got larger and larger teams. And it has just really paid off for me. I just can't explain in enough detail how much I appreciate what I learned while when I leave it.
That's
I
yeah.
I volunteer. I voluntarily I have 5 people that used to, all of which used to report to me at one thing that I do volunteer leadership development on a monthly cadence. And we follow the same practice. We've been through, I don't know, books over the years. And they all started out as individual contributors, just like I did. And every one of them now is in a senior leadership role. Uh, one one is a CTO, and another one I guess found out about a month or 2 months ago. He now leads he's CEO of his company. And
Nice.
I mean, the thing is, I'm so proud of their accomplishments. It's not me. They did all the work.
Right.
But
Right.
what they're doing that really gets me excited is they're taking that same practice and applying it to their teams. So what my mentor gave to me now has exponentially multiplied across who knows how many people.
Right. Right.
And it works, right? The process, the pattern works over and over and over. I've done it across multiple organizations, and it works every single time. And I've codified it into a set of templates that I use. I call a CTO in a box, and I take that as a suite of templates that I apply at every engagement, even in my black.
At what point, like in terms of doing these monthly trainings, is this down to the individual contributor level?
Absolutely, everybody participates,
Okay,
and it's
cool.
not
Awesome.
everybody participates in a voluntary meeting. I so you have the whole teams get together, but we don't force it upon them. It's
Sure.
only those who want to participate, and not everybody even wants to lead people. Not everybody actually wants to be a leader,
Right.
but they still can get something out of it. That the goal is really not just to make a difference in their professional lives, as I mentioned earlier, but learning how to take these practices and understanding how working people and um, you know moving people in the same direction takes it's a skill. As technologists, we spend our entire careers honing our technology skill, learning how to program in that new languages. But nobody ever thinks about the fact that leadership is also a skill. You
Exactly.
have to, you have to hone that skill just like you do with every other skill that you do as a professional. And so I find it so terrible and important to bring that to all the people that for whom I'm responsible so that, they understand ownership. They understand, that growth is so terribly important, not only for the professional life, but for your personal life. In those volunteer opportunities, right? Where somebody needs to step up and lead. Or in that crisis moment you find yourself in where, okay, I know what needs to be done and I can take the role of other ones and make it happen. It's just when you have given those skills to people where they practice them enough and understand them well enough, they find themselves in that situation in real life, then they can apply those skills and everybody benefits.
Yeah. I really like the idea of learning the skills before you need them,
Yes.
and and being able to demonstrate and practice before you've got the responsibility of the title. I think that's
You're absolutely right. And it all goes to, as a leader, we want to have a solid succession in place.
Mhm.
You don't you don't wanna you want I you don't want to be the positional leader that doesn't want people coming after you. I I want people on my team that want my job. I mean, that's exactly the mindset that I want everybody on me to have.
Right.
Uh, and if I get promoted out of the company or what have you, then I left the place better than I found it because now somebody could step in and take over and get out of that problem. And that's the goal.
Right. Right. Well, and also, you can go on vacation, and if like, if your spouse gets sick or, one of your kids needs help, you don't worry about everything falling apart because you've got this internal backup source.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing about that is that that I've noticed in companies is that the when leadership trusts that their people know how to operate effectively, then they can actually kind of step away and think strategically and not be mired in the weeds of tactically what are we doing with AWS, or we're going to change programming languages, or whatever it happens to be. They can take a step back and think about the business and not just be in the day to day. It feels to me like that's one of those pieces that we don't talk about often enough.
And you're exactly right. And that's particularly among the startups, growth
Yeah.
stage. The folks who are building at breakneck speed and maybe cutting a corner here or there, and then all of a sudden, now they've got those senior developer who's helped them build everything, and they need somebody to build the team up so that they can continue to scale and meet customer demands. That if they haven't taught that person how to lead, and they put him in the spot where she doesn't really know how to lead people,
Right.
then she bails. She goes and finds another place to work, and now what? Is that your is that the piece that puts you underwater for 6 months and it stops your growth for the next 2 years because now you're trying to develop that? And that's why I think it's so incredibly important from the get-go to spend time on leadership development, developing the team. Everybody on the team grows. It's a non-negotiable tenet in culture. Everybody grows. Transparency, we've got to be completely transparent, raise us, self concerns to the surface straight away. So you won't hide things that are going on and ownership, right? Those three tenets are just absolutely critical for culture that you're trying to build, especially in startups and the business.
Right. Right. I think a lot about employee engagement. Um, and for me, having really engaged people in the teams, really engaged individual contributors has always, at least in my experience, has been a huge productivity boost. Has that been your experience also? And like, how do you think about approaching that?
Well, so you're spot on. I like to be appreciated, and I think most people like to be appreciated. I mean, if someone feels that his company or his leaders spend time investing in that, developing, helping them grow, teaching them beyond just focusing on getting you're more than just a cog in a sheet. You're, you matter. And that genuine caring about other people and displaying that through your actions, through developing and developing them as leaders and helping them own those leadership skills makes a difference. And I think that people appreciate that. And so that's what kind of develops that ownership mentality in on the whole spectrum of culture is, my leaders are investing in me. So I care about this place and I own it and I'm accountable.
Yeah. Yeah. Why do you think, like, this is an area that I think is sorely lacking in companies? Um, I just, it feels to me like companies aren't really thinking about proactively investing in their people to upgrade their skills. Is there some reason behind that you've seen, you've heard?
I think it's a miss on a lot of senior parts. that we focus on short-term objectives opposed to the understanding that they've trained their folks to be able to take care of their customers, and take care of their business, and their customers and their business. And so they focus on, I gotta chase that dollar, I gotta chase that next feature. So I gotta push instead on delivering whatever that next new feature happens to be. And forget about the fact that, they're losing people because they don't develop their staff to be able to think about the ownership of what built the company to begin with. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Um, I just saw a post. Oh God, who was it? Uh, I'm blanking on the name of the guy. It's the guy that founded Block. Um, he was talking about getting rid of middle management because we have AI. And my initial reaction was, I don't think that's going to work because you're talking about feeling appreciated. I don't think AI is going to appreciate you very well.
Well, I mean, AI doesn't replace people who just changes some workflow. We still have to have human. We just have, and AI requires guardrails. There are, a plethora of guardrails that you absolutely must put in place. It,
Right.
while yes, it may enable developers and managers and other contributors to become more productive, there are just so many things that you have to put in place from a security perspective, but also from a a, a process perspective. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. So I use a whole bunch of different AI tools in my day-to-day plan to be all a whole plethora of things that my commission is right to tell it. And I will not. So obviously, if an AI agent is writing code for me, somebody needs to review that code. Think I'm going to let the same AI agent that wrote the code do the code?
No.
Not a chance. Not a chance. Any more than I would let the same developer who wrote the code review her own code. Right? And so I have a separate AI tool that will do the code review because it has, but it's not going to have the same blind spots that their agent that wrote the tool has. Then, before anything gets committed or pushed to production, a human who actually knows that code base has to review the code, and that human is the one who does the merge and pushes it into the production environment. But there's
Right.
always got to be a human. So that's what I mean about the workflows may change. You may become as a technology organization more productive because of AI, but you just have to change how it workflows day to day. So those leaders who say, I'm gonna, get rid of my workforce and let AI do all of it for me in a year or 2 years, very short period of time, they're going to find themselves going, you need to hire people again.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad to hear you say that because that's been I remember years ago, Google tried this thing where they got rid of all the middle managers and it damaged productivity as well as employee engagement. And then Zappos did their holacracy thing. Same idea, got rid of, and they had a real churn problem. I don't know of anybody who's actually been successful without that layer of people in the system. Yeah.
I want to ask you this question. Do you think when companies like Google or other huge companies or any company that says, okay, we're just going to eliminate a whole layer of leadership, Do you think those senior leaders are now going to do the leadership development on the
Oh,
individual contributors?
no, no.
Wow. And so their succession planning goes away, and then they find themselves in churn mode,
Right,
right?
exactly.
They'd have, you know, uh, so what's the ratio of when you have so many people, the churn ratio, I call it churn ratio, but that's not the word I'm looking for. It's like 30%, 30, you're replacing 30% of your workforce every year. That's not sustainable.
Right, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a crazy um, thing to think about. And I know I think about the places that I've enjoyed working the most. That number one, it was fun to work there, but number two, they were cash cows,
Yeah.
and they had very low churn rates. Like they, people came in, and if you made it past the kind of the 30-day, 28-day um, probationary period, people stayed there for years and years and years, and had a blast and made a bunch of money, and it was a
Uh,
good experience.
And then I would guess a lot of that loyalty and longevity stem from the fact that we had leaders be developed.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. Yeah. And
I mean,
both.
it's
Yeah.
what
Yeah. Both of those businesses had a very deliberate focus on um, taking care of the people, number one, and on growth mindsets, and everybody demonstrated it from the top down, and really, I want to say experimentation and continuous learning.
yep. That
Yeah,
I think you're right. And people in cultures like that, people are not afraid to make mistakes. And leaders understand that their team members who make mistakes learn from those mistakes. If you're not making mistakes, most likely you're not learning. You know?
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
And so you have to develop a culture where people feel comfortable enough to experiment, like you said, and 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 make the mistake, and then figure out how to recover from it so that it doesn't happen again.
yeah.
And take those lessons learned, right, and apply them elsewhere.
Yep, yep.
It's all
Um,
about growth.
when you're talking about training people, and some people decide they don't want to take on these leadership roles, do you see any patterns where people are like the same reasons show up for why people don't want to go into leadership?
I don't know that I can say I've seen a pattern uh, that I would necessarily call out. I've had folks that I mean they were completely forthright about no, I don't want to be a leader. I don't want to be responsible for the team. All I want to do is write code or I'm going to build this. I want to be a builder. And so I want to make sure that person has a path to succeed to the same heights that a person who has a leadership has. They're just as important to an organization's success as leaders. So I want to make sure that the rock stars have the same opportunities to succeed at those high levels as the superstars. And and so that's why I think these leadership development exercises pay off so well is because that's part of what we talk about in this session is not everybody wants to lead people.
Right, right.
Understanding though that in these senior roles, you have to understand how to get your point across in such a fashion that people still follow. And even though you're not necessarily a leader, you still have to get people to follow. And
Yes.
that's, one of the hardest leadership roles you'll ever find is being a volunteer, leading people who don't have to be there, right. Nobody's getting paid. You lead a volunteer organization, that's hard.
Right. Right. Yeah.
I
You
mean,
have
you
to.
have to be a true leader to do that.
Yeah. 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 That's one of those contexts where you're getting the alignment of everybody, and you're keeping them excited about achieving the goal, and cycling through over and over again the repetition of keeping them excited, keeping them focused on the goal, getting rid of friction,
Yep.
and making them happy about that. Yeah.
But, well, getting blocks out, getting leading blockers, all of that stuff that a leader should do. But that will certainly test your leadership. Leading a volunteer organization, group of volunteers, will test your leadership level more than anything else.
Right.
And
Right.
and the other thing that the rock star why leadership is so important for the past folks who want to stay individual contributors at that senior level is the fact that they will have to oftentimes lead across. They'll have to make a difference across understanding how leadership works. Again, people that don't report to you, they don't have to do what you say because of these positional, constraints.
Right.
Leadership development becomes even more critical than those roles.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think in my experience, the communication part of that is one of those development opportunities to really help people understand the value of the communication and building allies and doing research with people in other parts of the company, but also learning how to context switch based on the audience, so that the thing that you're trying to persuade them about is in a context that for them matters, versus
Absolutely right.
yeah. And for me, I think when I figured that out, um, I think that made a huge difference in how I was able to get stuff to happen for my teams, across all the other orgs in the company and the executives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to understand first in the situation, right? We talk about communication. You have to understand the situations first from those who would be affected by whatever it is that you think we might want to get this group of folks to do. You have
Right.
to ask questions, have to get clarity around a situation before you can come in and like prescribe any sort of change.
Yeah.
You may know the answer ahead of time. You may know that you know the answer, and you may find out that, hey, I didn't know. Oftentimes you will, but that doesn't give you license to come in as the savior. You have to gain clarity around the whole situation, and then with that clarity, then you can present options for how a team might progress towards the goal. You got to get their buy-in on the goal.
Right.
Otherwise, all you're going to get is resistance.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think I think that is an underappreciated skill set.
Without a doubt. And
Yeah.
it's hard. It is so hard to master. I still struggle with it to this day, and I've been leading teams for 20 years. You know,
Huh.
it is a very, very difficult thing. Know where things need to land, to put the brakes on and probe and ask the questions that help people understand. I have discovered that by asking those questions, oftentimes people I'm trying to influence in one direction or another will arrive at the answer, the same answer where I know that they're going to land, but by asking those questions. And I won't, I mean, I'll be honest with you, there have been times I ask those questions and I start probing and getting a little deeper into the mix there, and I discover things that I didn't that I thought I did, or that things aren't exactly how I imagined they were. And so that can kind of shift the conversation such that we become more collaborative. It's
Right.
more exactly. The communication piece of it is so critical. Uh, by the way, that ask when you think you know the answer or asking the questions and probing and kind of steering them by asking questions. It's called Dewey's pattern of reflective thinking. It's a communication slash uh, a persuasion technique,
Yep.
but it has the sometimes unanticipated benefit of uncovering a solution that might not have otherwise known about.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because for me, that feels like it's been easy for a really long time. Um, and I think it's because that's interesting. When you said it was hard, I'm like, wow, I think it's easy. What's what is the difference, right? What's the and um so my mom was a journalist growing up. She wrote for newspapers, and she always told me to be really curious about things. And so, like, I remember in high school writing term papers and doing all this research at the library to write term papers. Um, and I think when I got into the tech world and I started doing product management, and I was doing product management even though my title was software team lead. Um, because nobody we didn't have a product manager. Like I was talking to people about the problems and asking them questions and trying to figure out, how do we build better solutions? What's the core problem? And that just seemed like such a natural thing to do. But I also recognize, because I'd had practice doing that kind of thing since I
Right.
was in high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's part of my personality such that I know what the goal is. I want to go for the goal. And I want to just push hard to get to the goal.
Right.
And
Right.
early on in my career, as I mentioned to you, when I very first leadership role, I was in charge of everything. I'm in charge. We're going to do things my way. and
Right.
and it was a very hard part of my personality to overcome. And I still sometimes, I know we have to get XYZ done by such and such a date. And so I know that we are pressed for time to get this done. And under those conditions, sometimes I feel that burn to drive hard towards that goal. And instead of probing and asking questions to help my teams find the answer to the solution on their own. I just want to give them the answer so to get it done. And that's not the correct approach. It burns me every single time I've tried it. And it doesn't happen to me very often. but I still find myself struggling to continue to grow when I know they should see the answer, and I know they probably have just gone right in next to it, but I have to ask those few extra questions. And every single time I do that, everybody wins.
Right.
And the friction and the resistance that I otherwise would have encountered tends to dissipate in those situations. And only 99% of the time I wind up hitting goal. So I was stressing over nothing.
Yeah.
But nobody knew I was stressing except me.
Exactly. Right. Right. You're internalizing it. Yeah. 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 I think one of the things that I think about all the time is how do I get people to have a sense of ownership?
But
And I think that what you're talking about, where they're coming up with the answers, is they feel like they own it. And
exactly right. And that's one of those ancillary benefits that I was talking about the probing where, as I mentioned, the ownership tenet of culture is so, I mean, it is non-negotiable. You have to be, I own past, present, future. My teams own past, present, future. Theory. End of story. It ends with me. You will never, ever, ever hear me blame anybody on any of my teams for something that went silence. It's my fault for whatever reason. I didn't, you know, I approved improper QA or whatever the case is, but it's always my fault to the organization why things went sideways. Now, it doesn't matter why it went sideways to the rest of the organization. It matters to me why it went sideways, and I'm going to get to the bottom of it. But I'm
right.
never going to throw my team member under the bus for those scenarios. And when those coaching opportunities present themselves, if it was in fact, you know, due to error on somebody's part on one of my teams, then we'll coach through that. But nobody gets beat over the head with it. It's not something that I'm going to bring up over and over again across, however many times, unless you keep making the same mistake. And of course, you've got a different problem to deal with there.
Right.
But,
Right. Yeah.
but they're coaching opportunities. And, you know, I love coaching. That's one of the reasons that I love leadership. It's because that's what
Exactly.
leadership is all about. It's coaching.
Yeah. Okay. That needs to be the episode title for this episode. Is that leadership's about coaching?
It
Yeah.
is.
And I don't think that gets said often enough, loud enough. I was on a call earlier with a friend of mine, and we were talking about leadership, and he had some questions, and I said, well, it's like coaching a sports team. Like if you're the coach of a sports team, you want your people to improve. You've got some kind of systems or processes in your head to help those people operate better. And that every great sports team is great because they have good coaches. There is no
And
great
that's,
sports team that has
yeah,
shitty coaches. It
they're
just doesn't
absolutely
exist.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
And
And that's
there's
one
these,
of the things that John Maxwell talks about a lot in his books and sports team leadership.
yeah.
And it absolutely applies. The guy who founded WD-40,
Hmm.
that's right WD-40.
Yep.
There was
Yep.
I read something the other day that he had instituted at his company way back before they were as big as company as they are now. And it was essentially, we don't make mistakes around here. They're learning opportunities or something to that effect. And then I remember it occurred to me at the time, I kind of do the same thing and without even realizing that I have copied what this stuff's saying, because I don't talk about mistakes. I talk about coaching opportunities. We have a coaching opportunity. And
Right.
that's what I teach the folks on my teams, the leaders on my teams, is when somebody encounters a coaching opportunity, coach them through it. you
Right.
know?
Right.
And I mean, I'll admit, I probably wasn't as diligent about avoiding falling in mistakes as I wish I could remember this guy's name as he was, but I think it's a fantastic idea. We talk about coaching opportunities versus mistakes because
Right.
everybody's coachable,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you can overcome those scenarios and learn from them. Apply the learnings so that you become better as an organization.
Exactly. Yeah. 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 I'm so glad to hear you say that because I don't hear that leadership is coaching mindset nearly often enough.
I agree with you. It really is something that we should teach leaders more, spend a lot
Right.
more time on.
Right.
And even executive level leaders. And you talk about, you see all over LinkedIn, executive coach this, executive coach that. Why the executives not talk about coaching their teams?
Yeah. It's I I don't like I'm really curious, why they don't. Like what's the I'm sure part of it is they don't understand the ROI. Um but I think also
Understood.
part of it is because it's not part of the standard conversation, they just
I,
don't talk about it.
I so the ROI aspect of it, I think probably comes a lot closer to root cause than, than pretty much anything else. Does. And that kind of harkens back to what we were talking about earlier with the short-sightedness of a lot of like, short-term mentality. Like I need to see ROI now, and
Right.
forgetting about the investment in people that drives that ROI. Take just a minute, sit down, and map out how that investment paid off. You can have that business conversation. You can turn that investment into real dollars and
Right.
understand how it applies to your organization if you do make that investment, and then ramifications if you don't make that investment. You wind up with that 35% churn.
Right.
How expensive
Right.
is that?
Yeah. Yeah, high churn companies, I'm always blown away because I think like, how profitable do you have to be able to not care that you've got a high churn rate?
Yeah,
And
that's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that question.
yeah, and and if you are high churn like that, how much better could your business be if you could reduce your churn rate? You know?
Yeah, and honestly, in an M&A scenario where you're doing the due diligence, you're doing your technical due diligence, what's some of the things that PE farms look at and really care for them? We were talking earlier about startups and growth stage companies, and if you don't invest in the people and you find yourself 2 3 years in with that high churn ratio, you will become far less attractive to PE farms when they learn your technical stuff. The people who are there to maintain your code base, you've got one or two senior people, and then all these junior folks that are fresh out of college, and the senior people are the ones that are, their tenure is pretty low. So they don't really know the code base. And now you've got all this brittle code with people who don't really fully understand it. That becomes far less attractive to your PE firm than the company that has invested the time into those people. Once people stuck around, everybody understands the code base. You have your succession planning in place because you've done the leadership development. You've developed the people, not only from a technology perspective, but also from a leadership perspective. That's far more attractive to the PD firm flip
Yeah.
side of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's one of those, it's, blind spots, right? We all have blind spots, and people just aren't thinking about the cost implications. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you think about the PE firm who acquires a portfolio of companies and then starts squeezing every nickel out of them they can and drives all of their best people away because they refuse to invest in their people. And now they've got, a few people who have stuck around because they couldn't find a job somewhere else. And so now they, by default, become those senior people, but they hate their jobs. They hate working there. So you think they're going to put in the extra hours? Nah,
Yeah.
not a
Yeah.
chance. And then you're backfilling these people with folks that are straight out of college that have barely ever written a line of code. So now you've found yourself with all these portfolio companies that have all of the situation, the same situation we're talking about that's unattractive to other buyers. Now they can't unload them.
Right.
So now you're
Yeah.
stuck. Now you're stuck with all these companies that, now have brittle code bases that nobody can really support, constantly on outage calls. It's a mess.
Yeah. Damn. Um,
And you can't get rid of those companies now.
yeah. 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 There's like this fundamental belief structure up front that has this set of ripple effects because of that initial belief about people and ROI and, squeezing every dime out. Yeah.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm looking at the
Gotta take
clock.
care of people. Yeah. So
This has been an awesome call. I really appreciate it. Any last thoughts that you think that people that are in leadership positions, you've dropped a bunch of gems. I'm really happy about that. Any last thoughts?
just, we're responsible as leaders, we're responsible for the people on our team. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And so, as such, you have to genuinely care about them. You cannot be disingenuous uh, about how you invest in your people. And you have to come across and you have to demonstrate very clearly in your actions, because your actions speak so loudly nobody can hear what you say. And I stole that from a famous author that I think you probably already know.
I like it. Cool. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.